Hi, all.
Hey, hi.
With the panelist Sudharshan, am I audible?
Yes. Hey, hi. Hey, Bharath.
Asish, am I audible to you?
Yes, I am.
Yes, Bharath.
You can listen to. Audio is okay.
Yeah. Your audio is clear. Audio is clear from me as well, Ashish.
Okay. Hey, hi, Asish. Shray. Hi. Nice to see you.
Hi, Sudharshan.
Hi, Asish. How are you? Hi, Sudharshan.
Great. Got it.
Hi.
So it's 3 on my watch, so I see quite a lot of participants. I think we can get started. So hello all, good afternoon, and welcome to this interesting discussions on, how what are the game-changing strategies that can drive value using APIs, right? So API or application programming interface, like we know them, aren't something new, and they've been there for a while. Pretty much whatever we do today, right? Maybe order a meal on your app, book a cab, or even go ahead and buy that cryptocurrency, which an influencer said would probably be going to the moon soon, right? And even make a funds transfer quite securely without really, having to bother about, where would my money go, and it will reach the intended audience. Something which we can do very, very smoothly within a click of a button. And thanks to APIs, all this is possible because of that, right? So like I said, most of the organizations already have, an API management or an API gateway, rather, not a management one, right? Where it acts as an aggregator layer. And then, of course, there's a security that comes in, which can prevent DDoS attacks, right? Your XML parser exploits, or even an SQL injection, right? But it is still cumbersome to kind of design, develop, scale APIs with just an API gateway, right? And that's where an API management platform comes into picture, where we can design, develop, secure, publish, scale, monitor, analyze, and monetize, and also monitor and analyze wherever possible, right? So my name is Bharath Yaragatti. I'm a vice president at customer engineering at Niveus Solutions. We are a premier partner of Google Cloud and APAC region. And today we'll be discussing about the challenges of not having a right API management strategy, right? What are some of the best practices? What are the business impacts created with having a great management platform, and also some of the success stories, right? So I have also an elite list of panelists with me, so I'll take a quick minute to introduce them, right? So we have Mr. Asish Karunakaran, who's the head of IT in ICICI Prudential EMC. He's been a digital leader for a while now, and his profile includes, his work with banks like Oriental Bank of Commerce. He's been a part of SBI Cap called Vital Healthcare, right? So we'd like to hear from you a lot, Ashish, on this topic, and hearty welcome to this discussion.
Right? Yeah, thank you, Bharath.
Next, we have Mr. Shray Jain, who's the IT lead architect of, in Boston Consulting Group, right? He's been consulting a lot of enterprises in this whole area of, digitization, which includes cloud adoption, cloud acceleration. He's had a profile. He's worked with, Citibank before. He's worked with, Accenture before. So we'd also like to hear about, how various enterprises are planning this strategy from you, Shray. A very warm welcome to you as well.
Thanks, Bharath. I'm looking forward to speaking with everyone. Thanks.
Sorry. And I, of course, have Sudharshan Srinivasan, who's head of the Google Cloud's business application platform, Apigee for India. And he's been one of the pioneers of Apigee, and he's been with Apigee for a very, very long time. And he's had stints with iFlex, SAP Labs, and Fionora Software. And he's a strong believer, for any kind of a digitization strategy, a strong API strategy is a must. So we'd like to hear about the platform and the success stories from you, Sudharshan. A very warm welcome to you as well.
Thank you, Bharath. Thanks for having me.
Great. All right. So I think we have a good number of participants. So let's straight away get into the topic. A quick disclaimer, all the views expressed by the panelists here are pretty much personal. They may or may not echo with the organizations they represent. So with that, we can get started, right? So starting with you, Shray, in your whole field of consulting with enterprises who are adopting cloud or who have been accelerating their cloud, what do you think are the key challenges that they face if they don't really have an API management platform?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And I think I've been thinking about it since you put in this topic of API management and game-changing API management. What is the real need, right? What are the real challenges, right? And the whole thought starts from what API, and we start thinking about tech. What are the problems of tech? But I steadily realized in all of my experience in projects, tech was never a problem. The problem usually lies somewhere else, right? The problem is we work in the projects in a project fashion, right? There are verticals. We are real enterprises with real people. There are verticals. There are projects done by SIs or your individual development teams. And usually you start preparing your APIs ad hoc, right? People don't want to share their APIs forward, right? I think that the approach and the mindset is the biggest challenge, and not the technology. I think the willingness to change the mindset and have a common person or a buyer for the whole enterprise is a real key for success. And that is the first thing in the whole API management as a word, right? So moving on from a web first to a mobile first to an API first mindset is the need of the hour. Is because it's just going to increase, right? We are talking about moon. Elon Musk is talking about Mars right now, right? So I think it's just going to increase, right? So I think within our, and it is real, right? Usually we used to sell technology earlier, even as us, right? By showing the moon, right? But it is real for us. We are facing it right now. The need for APIs, the need for real-time integration, the need for security over APIs, and having some instances where insecure APIs have cost us a lot in the past. In my own individual experiences as well, we realize that developing an API is easy, managing them is a lot more tougher.
Absolutely, bang on there, right? Even in our experience, that's something which we have seen, and like you rightly called out, it's the mindset change. Any new technologies or any new project management techniques that we speak about, whether it's agile or whether it's adoption, it's a big change with respect to the mindset of people, right? I would like to bring in Ashish here, sir. So I say Prudential EMC has been doing great. I myself am a user of the ICICI True Touch app, and I have my mutual friends on it, right? And you have already been doing great in the scenario of customer acquisition and customer servicing, right? So what were those key challenges or key points that led you to consider an API management platform to accelerate this journey further?
Okay. Thanks, Bharath. Actually, that's a pretty interesting question. Anyway, thanks. Actually, like something like appreciation coming from a customer itself. Actually, like, okay, we are doing great, kind of. That's a great thing. Shray is actually earlier Shray was talking about there was kind of the typical challenges actually Shray was talking, and Bharath actually mentioned over here. Typical for us actually, like the reason why actually like, we started actually like thinking on maybe the take a decision kind of things to look for an API management gateway. It came from us actually like typically what it was mentioned earlier actually. So it was the people started demanding multiple actually technology delivery, and okay, as part of the typical process, we start developing an API. And is there any centralized management of something that is there that's missing on that? Okay, a doc point of you keep on developing on that. Then we also seen that actually there are projects coming, and there is no repository available where actually these API is available or something like that. And you kind of go and hunt for existing APIs if it is available, and you start consuming or actually making a change out of that, and then you start consuming on it. Then also kind of how would the API lifecycle as such? So, okay, there are some APIs actually like will be consumed and everything. It is need to fundamentally retire actually like in the later point of time when there is a different things is available as such. Where is that? And do I have a visibility on? Because we see a lot of surge in terms of utilization in terms of our services by third-party partners, especially fintechs, and a lot of fintechs actually utilize our APIs as they are the major consumers of our APIs. Of course, in addition to the digital platform what we are having. So do I have a visibility on actually what is kind of going on with that are going on with them? So the traditional approach, it lacks that particular clarity. So we don't know actually which APIs is consumed and who is consuming that particular. Yes, there was a proper a process it is being followed in terms of how it is being registered or actually started consuming that particular partner. But of course, we need to have the visibility. And of course, actually, when you have very sensitive information and with respect to all kinds of information we are hearing from the market, actually, we are super sensitive about the security access because it's an investment organization. We cannot take that particular light. So security become actually like one of the like key point actually the consideration which we need to have. So this all was a critical parameters for actually us to consider. Actually, I need to have a visibility. I need to know what is happening actually. And of course, we need to have something actually part of our transformation journey. We were about to take up a massive transformation journey. So we need to have the right kind of building block on top of that. So that one. And the simple things like, okay, I need to reduce my turnaround time for my API development. All those things are actually like, coming as actually some of the key consideration actually like coming for actually like taking a call that actually like we need to have the API management data. That's it.
Absolutely. So if I were to summarize it, right? So typically an organization like yours would need to have a control over the APIs, right? What kind of data is going in, what kind of data is being fetched from your partners, right? And another, get the visibility, the whole control, the monitoring aspect of it, and of course the key security, especially when you have a single point of entry and single point of failure. It's a key point that the security of it is, very, very important, right? So I'd like to bring in Sudharshan here. So Sudharshan, you have heard about some of the key considerations which Shray mentioned and key considerations which Ashish called about, right? So how do you think an API management platform, like Apigee, which is not a mere gateway, right? How can this basically solve all these problems, or how it can bring in more comfort and bring in more that control and visibility to the enterprises adopting this particular platform?
Great. So, first of all, I think some of the points that both Shray and Ashish raised kind of resonate so well with someone that has had a chance to look at this from both sides, right? I think first point that Shray made, right, essentially around the evolution, right? The evolution of a customer's journey when it comes to anything digital, and when it comes to anything that requires an API strategy to be an underpinning, the foundation of sorts, kind of evolves in two dimensions. Based on my experience of looking at customers, going right. One is what Shray just said, right? So, typically it starts with a project saying that, hey, you know what, I need this to start off through one point, right? But obviously, that will soon evolve typically into a program construct, right? Where there will be multiple teams, a few other applications will want to start to leverage, because that's the fundamental premise or this thing of an API, right? So how do you reuse? And when we say reuse, we are looking at it from an outside-in perspective, right? How can the same payment API, how can the same accounts API, how can the same authentication API be reused across multiple application stacks, right? And then soon it proliferates to become a platform conversation, which is again what I just mentioned, right? So solution is almost always there, right? So very few programs actually, very few, initiatives actually fail to kind of get through. The timing will vary depending on the persona, depending on the execution style, depending on, how core and central is it from, how is it coming top down with, a bunch of developers kind of propagating this as from a technology and architecture, right? A decision within an organization, right? So all of these are organizational behavior, but this evolution between, across program to platform, most of these people. When you look at it from the industry, right, from a technology perspective, rather, you will see that, most conversations from the customers, right, that we start with access, right? Say, hey, I want to open up this in a way because there is a disruption typically coming from business saying that, hey, this partner wants access to this data. Now I need a layer to kind of open it, right? So access becomes the starting point. And this has happened over many years, right? So we are, seeing different industries at different, styles or, different stages of maturity when it comes to access. Then typically what we'd like to take our customers through this journey is also from, access to an integration, which is again something that you see like, hey, what can I integrate with outbound connection, right? So not coming from outside in, but can I integrate with other SaaS providers, other cloud-based technology providers, and bring in an integrated experience for my applications, right? So access integration, but eventually what we think really matters is a connected experience, right? How do you kind of take these two and package an experience and then eventually transformation, right? Transformation as in like new channels of business. How do we drive business outcomes for customers with an API led? So To answer your question very quickly, and in a way that kind of resonates with what Shray and Ashish said, I think having a platform, not a gateway, as you rightly said, Bharath. So it's not a gateway conversation; it's a platform conversation. Having the right platform that can meet the customer where they are in the journey is very important. Now there are multiple dimensions to this, right? So, and this is where I think Apigee can definitely help. One is, not all customers are going to be having a very homogeneous backend, right? They're going to take multiple cloud strategic to the business, right? So we see many customers that are in other hyperscalers, right? Not necessarily Google Cloud. So you need to have a strategy that allows your platform to be omnipresent, right? Can it be in multiple cloud platforms? Irrespective of where your organization is taking your cloud decisions on, right? So Apigee can be that control plane and have that runtime infrastructure be anywhere you so choose to run, right? So it could be in your cloud, it could be in other clouds, it could be in data centers, it could be a microservices strategy which you would evolve over a period of time with monoliths that you have. So that transformation in itself can be a multi-year kind of exercise. How do you deal with all these complexity by having one control plane, one consistent plane in customer experience, right? So that is something that Apigee really shines in. And of course, whatever Ashish mentioned in terms of visibility, security, and everything else, we absolutely believe that you cannot control something that you cannot see. So giving you, world-class, state-of-the-art analytics, both business and operational anomaly detection, leveraging a lot of what Google Cloud has to offer from an AI/ML perspective. All of these wanted to give the right kind of optic is, I think, very key when you start this journey. You don't have to do anything great. You just have by your traffic flowing through a platform like this can give you a whole bunch of optics into how the business operates.
Great insights there, Sudharshan. Like you rightly said, right? See, most of the BFSI industries aren't looking at having a single, private cloud or a single public cloud strategy, right? It's important to have like a whole hybrid and multi-cloud strategy, and that's where an API management platform, which is also called out as one of the key pillars of modernization, right? If you look at application or infra or data modernization, what are those 3 or 4 pillars, right? Your microservices and containers, your security, your availability, and having a strong middleware layer or a management platform becomes a key there, right? And that's where I think like you said, combined with the customer experience, this is where you'll be able to give that leverage for the developers to focus on adding new products and features so that they can keep their customers happy and acquire more customers. At the same time, make it at the same time make it a very easy job for the intra teams to interact with each other, having the same set of APIs that can be used. So great insights into that, right? So coming back to you, Shray, we have seen that while we have been implementing an API management platform for our elite clients, business continuity becomes a key factor, right? While you have a lot of these legacy APIs, and then you're building new applications, which could be hybrid in nature, and you have a lot of APIs in the legacy format, and then you have APIs which you're trying to build on on an API management platform, right? So what do you think are or what do you have experience that are the key best practices that enterprises needs to consider or teams needs to consider while they adopt this particular platform and start the migration journey?
Yeah, to be very honest, the answer is very simple. It's two-speed IT, right? You leave the core layer with the core layer, you create a digital layer and start expanding there. From an API, I mean, the answer is actually two-phase, right? When you're answering for APIs, the answer changes. When you're answering for API management platform, the answer changes, right? So if I have to answer for API management platform, then the strategy is only 2 ways, right? Dump all APIs, start using the management platform, or start building use case wise, right? What I've said is dumping everything never works. Ultimately, you have to go use case wise, and that makes a lot more sense because then you're looking from an end user perspective and start using the platform organically rather than just trying to quick answer. So from an API management platform, that usually see that there are 2 ways to way usually is more successful. It really depends upon the organization, scale, size, setup, and those kind of things. Coming to APIs, now that's an interesting topic as well, right? Because APIs have variety of use cases, and if I can kind of divide into different use cases at a broad level where APIs can be used. Usually, it is right now being used at mobile or multi areas. When you're trying to create a mobility layer, Second is any integration of sort that you're doing, right? You may have tech integration or your own internal integration. One is the data as a service. Now you have your data source and you want to data to any system. Fourth one is the B2B itself, right? One enterprise application, another enterprise application within two core system itself. And the last one is the open API framework that is evolving, and I think India will soon get there as well. I think as best practice, what we have seen is to get the first three right first is the right answer. Because if you go open API and you don't know how to manage your inner mobility, data as a service solution, you're going to feel really bad. So I think if you classify users in 5 buckets and take the first three and champion that and move it ahead, is the right way to move forward.
Got it. So basically, here is the thing, right? I mean, irrespective of whether it's an insurance sector or a banking sector or security sector, most of the core banking solutions are still on-prem, right? In India, we have not seen cloud adoption of core banking yet, whereas they're moving into that direction. So when we build these hybrid newer, cloud-native applications, it could be for onboarding, it could be for servicing. It becomes key, strategy where all these traditional APIs, again, how do I expose them to be consumed by these newer applications, right? So that becomes one of the challenge. While you may build a few new APIs, how do I use, like, even for example, an account opening API, right, which is a traditionally core banking part of a core banking service? How do I convert it into a modernized API and then expose it for my other applications to be used? And that's where I think the best practices that you called out.
And if I can interrupt you there, Bharath, just taking the conversation along while Asish and Sudharshan, visually I've been thinking it perfect train, right? And one of the basic questions that I get asked a lot of time is what is the difference between a microservice and an API? It is a huge conflict, right? To kind of get there, right? So imagine it as a blocks of train carriages and running, and the connector between is the API. Actually, the blocks are the microservices, right? But what is an API gateway? It's a track that the train is running on, and the gateway provides the signal, the red, green, and orange signal for it to go forward with the policies or not. But the actual person who is sitting in the control center is the API management platform. And he allows the locomotive, which is a high-speed train or a goods express, slow train, to go at a fast, basically throttle. And that's the encapsulation of the overall world of what you're trying to speak right now.
I think that's a great layman explanation for understanding, the difference between microservices and APIs and a management platform. So Ashish, like you said, right, you have embarked this journey of adopting a management platform very recently, right? So in addition to what Shray called out, keeping the segments like enterprise to enterprise separate, kind of things, right? What are some of the key best practices that your teams followed, which helped you, a smooth migration of this whole process? If you could share those, that would be great.
Okay, so one of the important thing we mentioned, actually something related to what Shray has answered is, okay, but the legacy APIs, we kept it like that. So we very clear that actually we are not going to touch upon that. And whatever we are going to build, it is need to be fresh on that. We never actually come back from actually go for a migration kind of thing. So that approach we are not taking. And second thing is that we kind of built a team actually specifically focusing on APIs as such. So it's created, it has a team of people from actually both operations, the product development team, and also the technical architects and everything. It is actually across the application stack as such. And the fundamental task for that particular thing is that actually like, okay, whatever actually like we developed is the past. So now what we are going to consume or maybe going to publish is actually going to be fresh. Look at an actually fresh perspective as such. Based upon that, let us build new thing. And it is not to look at the actually like, don't look at the legacy as such. And leverage actually what is an application, the platform as such to offer as such. Accordingly, you build on that particular thing. And so this particular team is also responsible for kind of the whole of the life cycle for the APIs. So this is a team actually who will be when to retire the existing APIs also. That is actually the team is actually being asked for that. And we also have a specific plans for the existing API inventory, when to retire as such. and what need to be. So we have a mapping actually for the existing APIs. So these are the fresh APIs. So fundamentally kind of replace this particular thing. And accordingly, this is going to be kind of retired as. And second thing is that with the gateway assets actually coming, we have an advantage actually. We can limit actually the consumption on that. We can set the kind of the number of concurrency as well as the throttling, and we can reduce particular thing. So that was also something, because that is an area where actually we have certain actually because it's a 24/7 running APIs and everything. We are also connected back to some of the service providers and everything. We need to be super careful about those kind of things. Third is something like look the security at a different perspective altogether, and try to implement whatever the kind of best practices in the security without actually compromising anything in terms of actually okay, it may have an impact on some of the partners and everything. No, don't look at that particular thing. So implement the best practices is something like we followed on that. So these are the kind of best practices we followed on that.
Great. So that's perfectly fine. Some of the like you said, one way is if you have a lot of legacy APIs, then migration becomes you have to adopt some strategy for that. But if you're going all in, and having a greenfield development and giving a completely new experience to the users, I think the strategy you mentioned is perfectly great in that, right? So in some of our cases, what I'd like to add a few points on how we were able to prioritize which APIs to go or take them for migrations, right? So the ones that are very, very critical and important to keep your business continuity on are the ones which would probably be, we would leave them as is and continue to be used as is, right? And then we would take some lower hanging fruits, which might not be business critical, but still are complex in nature. And also some of the simple ones. So these were the ones we took up, and then, we helped our clients to migrate these first. And once everybody was confident that, yes, this is going to work, and this is, our jobs have become much more easier now. Various departments can use those same APIs, and that confidence is built, right? Like Shray mentioned, it's a cultural change. So that culture also has to be adopted. Once they started gaining confidence over the platform is when we started taking these more business critical, APIs and then started migrating. So that's something that's really helped us a lot. I would like to ask Shray this key question, and I'm very tempted to ask this: like, how important do you think is the role of a partner or someone to who's having the right skill set or who has the experience of taking these large scale migrations for APIs, right? What kind of a role do you think they play in whole designing the roadmap, coming up with this whole implementation process, choosing the key APIs, along with the enterprise teams, and then implementing the whole process? So what do you think is your call on that?
No, I think it's my bread and butter. It's super important, right? Because if you don't have the right partner, the project doesn't get delivered. Nobody gets paid at the end of the day. So, and you don't get business value, right? No, it's super critical, right? See, the problem is that anybody can Google. To search any topic, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the right skill sets and the know-how of the product, and the super critical point is when we are going to cloud solutions, and we have witnessed it at many places, right? Knowing the limitations of the solution is the first priority, rather than knowing the positive points about the solution, right? The data transfer limits, it becomes a mess, right? You can't do anything about it. You can't ask a cloud vendor to go and change what has been said for. So having the right partner to know the right downfalls or the right controls, rather, as a right word, right? The right controls and the right limitations of any platform is very critical to choose and apply the correct product and solution for the correct for the enterprise itself, because everybody would have a different need and a different requirement for a solution.
Absolutely. I have a few questions coming in from the audience. So what we'll do is, we'll in the interest of the points we want to cover, we'll probably take them towards the end, right? We have a reserved 10 to 15 minutes question. I'll try and pick up as many questions possible which have come from the audience and try to address this, right? So Sudharshan, coming back to you, we know that Apigee is a leader in the Gartner quadrant in full lifecycle management, right? And if you could share some success stories on how enterprise have basically driven values from adopting this whole strategy of an API management gateway or APIs in general, maybe India and abroad, and if there are any indicators specific on BFSI segment also, that would be great. So we'd like to hear from you on some of the success stories.
Well, yeah, Apigee has had has been around for a while. So we have thousands of enterprise customers globally. And I personally have had the privilege and the pleasure of being part of this journey for over a decade. And so I've seen a lot of these customers from the way they started off their journey and actually go through this project program platform evolution to become truly massive platforms, right? And the journey in India actually also started a couple of years back, actually, and we have built a very significant momentum over the last couple of years. We have a few dozen customers, and actually, north of 50, around 50% of the customer base is actually from BFSI. Just to give you a kind of view. These customers vary across a variety of different segments within BFSI. If I were to just take an example of within BFSI, let's even narrow down to India, for instance. These range from relatively smaller regional banks to some of the largest private sector banks in India. And the smallest, some of the ones that the smaller banks have been able to do is actually mind-boggling. I mean, in the sense that just even from your question in terms of the use cases as well, right? So the kind of problems that they've been able to solve using Apigee or an API platform as a key strategic advantage is to drive certain first-party applications like Shray mentioned, right? So let's say you're in this case a relatively small SME-focused bank. Wanted to drive a lot of automated lending for SMEs, which is actually a relatively complex space even within the lending space, right? So they had a first-party application. You walk into, if you're a trader, you just walk into a branch, use the experience that the manager gets using the iPad application or the Android tablet application. Go through a few clicks and then actually go through the KYC and the automated in principle disbursal of loan, things like that, right? So it's a first party application. But what is really exciting to us, right, is the way in which they leverage the same APIs that powered that first party application experience to drive B2B partnerships, where you could actually partner with an NBFC and actually originate a loan while you could actually underwrite using the core IP that you have, right? That gives you scale. That is the true power of APIs in our opinion. To drive not just your first-party applications, but to be able to forge new partnerships. The ecosystem play, especially in BFSI, with the fintechs playing a significant role to drive the customer experience. Like how many of us actually, to be honest, right? So I don't even go to some of my trading applications. I just use small as an example, right? So we have kind of gotten used to or getting used to newer experiences to drive a lot of our day-to-day banking and financial transactions, right? So those are some really good cases. Some of the larger banks drive massive amounts of volume on UPI payments because that's becoming a significant, and especially in the last 14 to 18 months, right? With cashless payments becoming the primary mode of transacting. Those are going through the roof, and again, so some really high volume conversations become very important. Insurance and insurance aggregation is again a very interesting space, and also within insurance, we are starting to see a massive number of newer segments, right? We are in fact starting to see very new age fintech that are recent customers who are starting to do some really interesting work with using Apigee and APIs, both on the northbound to aggregate demand aggregation and supply. Supply is basically the products that you have, right? So demand aggregation is becoming a very significant part, but then to abstract that complexity to kind of connect to core service providers, right? Actual insurance providers, or even from a banking perspective, right? We are starting to see some very interesting examples in terms of neobanking, pure digital banking, SME banking, where we are starting to see, aggregators or providers of fintechs that kind of aggregate a lot of complex, products like invoicing, cash management, and things that are not normal, right? A bank will have a vertically integrated stack that becomes complex. But what if I were to give you a bouquet of these products, and if you could actually package them in a way to kind of take it? So those are some of the use cases that we are starting to see. All of these are actually happening in India, right? And none of what I just told are like global examples, right? So that way we are super excited about what's going on, and very exciting to be part of what's actually going through in the space in India.
I think you answered one of the questions that I see from Mr. Rajit saying, how do you see BFSI adopting Apigee in India? I think that clearly calls it out, right? So even in our experience, what we have seen is, today we are able to open savings accounts in flat 4 minutes, right? You see any bank, nobody goes to the banks to open it, and all that has been possible, because of an API management platform. And I can proudly say that Apigee is being used by a lot of these public sector, private sector banks in India to enable this kind of services and facilities to their users, right?
Actually, there is another very sorry if I may add. This is a very interesting and something that is very personal to me as well, right? In the sense, this company that we work with, I don't know if I don't have the liberty to name the company, but this company that we work with is one of the largest rural fintechs in India, right? Rural fintech has such a niche space. Actually, take the financial products to remote villages, by means of how they and there is a very clear business model, and Apigee helps them not just deliver that experience, but also diversify them into newer business models. Right? So a lot of very interesting use cases. Like we just touched upon so many different niches within the BFSI space, right? So it's just very exciting.
Absolutely, absolutely. And today we're talking about open banking, right? Everywhere. Open banking is enabling even larger enterprises, to collaborate very securely with the fintechs. Could be in customer servicing space, could be in analytics space, right? All this is possible because of having this, a platform which can enable this whole collaboration, right? So we've seen that happen. So Ashish, what some of the benefits that we have seen while working with our customers is a smooth customer onboarding, customer servicing, right? Secure transactions, reporting, right? Salesforce empowerment within the enterprises is something which we have been able to achieve, by using Apigee as an API management platform and building these hybrid applications, right? So, what are some of the business impacts that you foresee upon using the a platform like this, or any API management platform for that matter? What kind of business impacts do you foresee that enterprises would be able to get out of this?
Okay, so I can actually start off with mentioning actually what we are benefiting out of that now, and of course we'll be benefiting a lot in the future as such. But we just started a journey in a year back, so the currently what I could see that I can differentiate into two areas. One is all my customer-facing applications point of view. The customer-facing application, especially when I want to kind of launch anything, or the turnaround time has actually significantly reduced, and I can provide actually a uniform customer experience across all kind of digital platform as such, with the kind of consistency in the performance as such. So that is a game changer. And second thing is all the large part of this, all the fintech integrations and everything. There, the developer portal actually have made our life significantly easy. And otherwise, it was kind of high friction as such for each and every integration, each and every partner we kind of need to integrate as such. So the whole of your sandbox environment for that, and of course on the entire documentation and the way actually could publish on those kind of things. So reduce the friction significantly as such. And this is enabled us to kind of, we being the first partner to kind of go along with the kind of partners, the first actually service provider, because there's already competition in the multiple other games and everything. So it's enabled us to kind of go compared to actually the competition as such. And that has actually added a lot of benefit to us. And of course, any kind of third-party integration as such, because it's right now, any kind of integration is an API integration. Any kind of third-party integration, okay, we will do it in a week's time or something like that. Instead of actually really talking about actually, let us do the analysis, all those kind of stuff. We are kind of ready with all the kind of things for an integration perspective, and it's a quick integration as such. So that's something like change the game altogether as such.
So application modernization combined with the middleware modernization is, the business impact created out of that is massive, right? Shray is smiling there. So Shray, if you could add some of your inputs into this,
No, I was thinking about it, and I was thinking about the days when we did not have an API management tool, right? And it was not too long away. I think 4 years back, 5 years back, with an insurance firm, we were trying to set up a nudge model or completely on the cloud, on the public cloud, using it was a serverless architecture we were trying to replicate, and we were trying to share nudges to your sales representatives, what to do next, right? And it was a real-time model. And at that time, we just use an API gateway, right? And I remember the pain that we had gone through. Again, it takes time to actually abstract what is a management platform versus the API, right? Ultimately, you still have to build the API, right? But how do you reuse it is the key, right? And then now in some of the previous projects that we are doing right now, and as Sudharshan was saying, on the lending side, tremendous value, right? I'll give you some numbers as well while we're talking about it, right? So we'll be creating something called as a unified digital platform. What enables is that my complete backend is common across all the channels. Say, for an example, now I created a portal which has service requests, which is a post login page for a customer. And there's a service that is a microservice that is written and exposed on Apigee as an API for my web portal. Now I wanted to enable my chatbot. I actually enabled my chatbot within a week. So that's the business value, right? You decide a channel, it takes a week, right? So what we are doing is we're moving away from an integration hub model to a self-service model. That is something what Ashish is echoing, right? The developer portal, the documentation, the team being able to kind of put out the APIs fast without worrying about security for this particular channel, being able to transform the APIs. It's not simple scaling, right? And I've seen some of the questions as well in terms of challenges, and we can come to the questions later. But that's a real challenge, right? Because you're going to integrate with 5 people, and 5 people you're going to provide the same API service. They're not going to agree to it, right? They're going to have their own formats. So that ability to have that abstraction layer, the middleware is going above in context, right? The ability to provide transformation is a real power. One more project wherein I did not want to use token. I did not want to create a tokenization platform. Why do I need to create a service for tokenization? So that Apigee provided me out of the box. So the tokenization was again used across all the channels without me being able to develop too much of a code. And that is where the security part gets built in automatically from the platform out of the box.
Absolutely. And today's generation, I think the banking has changed from the way, or for that matter, any kind of servicing, right? Whether it's insurance or whether it's mutual funds or anything, nobody has the patience today to, go through all your things and do it, right? So everything needs to be instant, and people expect these smart nudges to be given to them, right? Saying this is your portfolio. Here is where, if you invest in this, you're going to be saving so much in the next 5 years, right? Or you're paying so much more. Or let's say you spend so much less on your Starbucks, maybe you'll be able to, meet your goal that your short-term goal that you've been trying, probably buying a bike or something. So the generation today is used to getting this information rather than they digging for it, right? So your entire data analytics, the smart platform, the smart nudges are all possible when you have a very, very strong, API management platform, because that kind of becomes the backbone for having all these kind of services being given to your customers, right? So it's a key contributor there, and that's a major business impact that you would be creating to hold on to your next generation customers so that they enjoy your platforms and they continue to invest in your services or applications, and they continue to grow along with you, right? That becomes the key.
Yeah.
So Shray, coming to a very interesting piece which we have seen, right? I think it was also called out in the invite that went out, right? So we have seen that some of the monetization is kind of a key enabler for some of the businesses, right? So how do you kind of see it from a BFSI angle? Is it even a relevant scenario? So if you could tell that to our audience, we'd love to hear from that.
Yeah, so BFSI as a space is very vast, right? Because the type of industries that are there within the world of BFSI is kind of huge, right? This space right now is being tried and tested. Say a wallet can be within a BFSI space. Now, wallet has to provide payment as an option to all the apps, food delivery apps, any other delivery apps that you have, right? Now, that's an API. You have to monetize that, right? If you don't start monetizing your payment API, then so monetization comes in different aspects, right? So again, a monetization of data is something where there's a lot of scope for us as an industry to move upon. And I think there are a lot of frameworks and things that are happening in the background that will help it. I think there are some very good initiatives that are already on the way that is going to improve the data monetization bit of it. But from an API as a business service is already relevant and being used. The ability to track it and bill it is a key ability which is usually lacking when you're developing an API. The reconciliation part of it, it's a huge headache to reconcile all your APIs, go through the logs and those kind of things. So those kind of things, when you automate, really helps in the overall monetization aspect of the API management platform.
Yes. Sudharshan, I think you would have a lot of customers who are already using your platform to monetize their APIs, right? So how do you see it, and what kind of fit do you see that in the whole banking, insurance, and mutual funds or securities industry?
Oh yeah, so I think see, monetization is a very niche and a specific topic when it comes to API monetization, right? Because obviously every business needs to monetize either a service or a digital asset or a physical good or anything of that sort. But when we talk specifically about API monetization, I feel there are certain industries that are more prone or have a high propensity to have a direct impact or a direct monetization revenue channel out of it. And obviously, Apigee has seen a lot of pattern be from the Google perspective, right? Any large data, any enterprise or any business that has data that can be distributed through digital assets or digital APIs, digital channels are very have a very high direct propensity to monetize direct API channels. Examples could be the likes of weather data. As an example, AccuWeather is one of our customers that have massive amounts of data on live weather data. And if you actually go to developer.accuweather.com, you will actually see that they have packaged the API access in a way where you can directly see if you pay for a certain amount of subscription, you get certain kind of data, and then you can amplify that, change that to kind of get different kinds of quality of data, right? Telco is a great vertical example where direct telco assets can be monetized, like of Telstra and others have actually got various packages that allow you to monetize network assets, and they use the Apigee monetization capabilities to monetize. We are starting to see, BFSI particularly is being a highly regulated industry, and obviously, financial services is the core of what you do. So it becomes a bit hard to find use cases that are directly monetizable through API channels. Having said that, we are starting to see certain niches, right? For instance, I'll give you an example that's outside India, and I'll also try and give you an example in India that recently a customer that we acquired. So outside India, there are certain banks that allow you to and obviously also thanks to the larger open banking / PSD2 type regulation, you have very well-defined interfaces to open up accounts and payment data, right? So account information, so there are examples where some of our customers have actually opened it up for credit verification purposes, so that if you want to apply for a certain credit score, it becomes a massive process in certain parts of Europe and US, right? So you go apply digitally, and you give a consent to the bank to open up certain data, and you are happy to actually pay pay a little fee for it, and the credit scoring company is also willing to pay a little bit of a fee to the bank to give access with your consent, so that the process can be very quick. Can be compressed from weeks to days, right? So, or even hours when the data is readily available. In India, we are starting to see examples where insurance aggregators are looking at monetizing this data, and we have a recent example. But that is one area where I think it is directly relevant. But if you look at it from a dominant posture in this industry, I feel is to kind of look at it with a lot of indirect monetization revenue opportunities, right? And that comes in the flavors of partner ecosystem development, and I think Shray also alluded to that. It becomes inevitable that you open up certain things in the spirit of partnership, because there are certain services that you cannot go and do, and basically by virtue of how you are structured, it's almost like hey, I'm a aircraft carrier, but how do I become as nimble as a speedboat, right? So there are fintechs that are the speedboats that kind of give you and get you access to the last mile customers, and you will have to kind of forge certain partnerships to kind of take care of those. While you can certainly build that, it takes more time, right? So there's leveraging the APIs to kind of drive those business partnerships lend itself very well to indirect monetization opportunities. One last closing comment that I would make is, with neobanks in India, we are actually starting to see a little bit of, there are not many that I've seen, but there are a few that do a fantastic job of actually putting it on their website and saying that, these are the various tiers. If you are taking a product for SMEs, one of the actual USPs is to say that you pay a premium, you get access to our APIs, right? And you see that in the site, you see that in the developer portal, and actually say that, if you need access to the APIs, you can actually charge a premium, right? You may not charge the APIs themselves, but to get access to that programmatic access to your services, you will have to, look at that as a premium, and you're able to charge a little bit of a premium, right? And then obviously, this one last, I said that was the last point, but I just thought of another very pertinent point. We are also starting to see that in the neobanking space that customers are starting to create niches, right? What if I were to go and target only SMEs? What if I were to go target startups? What if I were to go target educational institutions, right? Can I create products that will allow us to go and create that customer base and quickly create replicable business value, right? Those are some of the areas where what we are starting to see, and all of those are API-led conversations, right? So
absolutely.
I hope give some perspective in terms of what we see from a monetization perspective across the board.
True. It boils down to the basic value of business, right? If you have something of value, why give it away for free? Even though that's not your key business, right? Great insights there. In fact, so I think before we take into the questions, I have a quick two announcements to make, right? So Google recently launched their second region in Delhi, right? Delhi NCR has a new region. So most of the banking industries or BFSI sectors would have regulations even from the RBI, right, to have their data residing within the country. So now, along with Mumbai, several zones in Mumbai, we also have the Delhi region on which it can be hosted, and there's a separate segment for BFSI as well on that. The second key announcement is we, being a premier partner, we're announced today as a breakthrough partner of the year for 2020 for Google Cloud. So being a part of Niveus Solutions, that's a proud news that I have, which I would like to share with you all. So having said that, let's go on to the questions. I believe we have seen most of them, and some of them have been answered. So Ashish, there's one question to you coming in, which says, what are the key challenges you face while implementing API-based processes in collaboration with fintechs?
Okay. If you look at the challenges perspective, one predominantly was some fintech has a fairly good amount of maturity in terms of the ability to integrate and everything. But there are few fintechs, we see some kind of challenges in terms of integration, especially like the technological challenges and such. But that we could address. It took a larger time as such. And some fintechs, their technology is being actually outsourced to some of the partners as such, which has their own actually, like say, because we are asking them to kind of change the fundamentally, like how they consume the APIs and everything. Actually, the question comes is actually why we need to go for a change. So that kind of friction was there. And the third one was, along with that, actually, we are strengthening our security system. That is where actually we had a lot of friction came, and it took actually a lot of convincing as such. We had not completed the whole journey of all integrations as such. Yes, that was actually like, it's a next level of security we are implementing part of this particular implementation. So there was some frictions on that.
Great. Thanks, Ashish. So I think, Shray, next question is to you, right? So what is the kind of challenges you face while consulting, corporates or enterprises, right? Especially for digital transformation on the API-based connects. I'm sure they would fall in line with the security aspect of it, and how do we expose our data, how do we consume their data? But anything specific other than what you already called out you'd like to add?
I'm going to be transactional on this, right? And right from a developer mindset, I think the developer mindset was a real challenge that I had an issue with, because what happens is the BAs who are working usually while integrating and creating the documents for integration, we usually miss out a lot of edge cases, which lead to a lot of problem. I think creating of those edge cases such as false positives, false negatives. What if the status code is coming as nothing or unknown status code is coming, how do you handle it in the backend systems? These are the real world challenges that are huge, because how the failures are that in an API. This is on a functional aspect in terms of how to design the system. The second aspect of which is on performance, and usually a poor architecture or poor decision, sometimes trying to take all the data from an OLTP or a transaction system lead to performance challenges, right? So you have to design the API strategy in such a way also that if there are such certain data points, without, see, you want to make it real time, right? But even after real time, you have to classify it, right? What kind of data do you really want within the transaction processing perspective? And if that is transaction processing perspective, then it has to be linked to an OLTP system or a live database, or some data points which are not real time required. And these are real world challenges, right? You take it from a data mart or a reporting database or something of that sort, basis on your architecture. I think these are the real world challenges that I've seen in APIs. And I've seen a lot of people struggling on it. And I think it just stems from the fact of the discipline in planning the API has to be there right from the start.
Right, strategy is very, very important, right? Only then you will, rest of the journey will be a smooth sail. So laying that foundation on the strategy and the roadmap becomes a key contributor there for achieving success with this adoption. Great, thanks Shray for that. So there's one question on security here. I know I covered it saying, Apigee brings in that security layer, but a specific question to you, Sudharshan, is how does Apigee secure APIs in a third-party integration? I know that's a vast topic, but if you could give some.
Oh, certainly. Yeah, I think security is a huge topic. See, third-party integrations, even third-party integrations, I think, have multiple layers. If you were to peel the onion, if I can use that, analogy, right? See, if you look at third-party, if you look at the entire value chain, right, as it relates to APIs, there is always an end user that is consuming that experience, and that experience is always an application, right? That application could be your application, third-party application, B2B, whatever else, that's an application. And then that application is actually built by a developer, right, who's building that experience. And that developer is essentially consuming certain core capabilities from a backend service, that is a backend, and then there is an API. So this is that value chain that doesn't change, irrespective of whether you're a retailer, BFSI, e-commerce platform, gaming platform, you name it, this kind of remains more or less unchanged. And at every level, there are certain parameters, right? You can call it third-party integration, but almost all of it kind of goes into this kind of fits into this value chain, where you have threat protection that needs to be managed at the periphery, and then there are application and app-related challenges or security controls, right? Access controls, right? Who gets to access which data, right? Whether it is going to be secured using simple keys, OAuth, authentication, quotas, monitoring, managing it at various levels. And then you go to actually saying that, the third-party integration is just data, but who gets access to building or opening up that data, right? Do developers have the right kind of controls to open up that data for third-party access, right? So that level of control at the developer level is also very important. When I say developer broadly, I'm also meaning the applications, right? Can this particular application actually write or change the customer profile, right? So there could be a B2B application, there could be a B2E, a business to employee application, which will allow you to go and change, or a call center application that can say, I can change your phone number or a personally identifiable data. While a third-party application that you might expose to an ecosystem provider cannot do that, right? Because they don't control, they're not the custodians of the data, right? So those two are same APIs, right? At the end of the day, it's account information, but do you have the right levels of access control to be able to change that? So again, that gets into security governance and everything else, right? So all of these need to be managed, and that's why you are not looking at it at a protocol or network level, right? Saying that, hey, I have done two-way SSL over IP whitelisting, that is enough. That kind of secures one part of the entire exposure layer, but you need to, irrespective of what the use cases, you have to be able to cover that at various levels, right? And that's where having a holistic security posture and a platform strategy is very important. I don't know if I answered that particular question, but I just thought it is important not just to look at that, but entire gamut of.
There's a whole lot of information specific to security that can be shared. I think this much would be good. Definitely, the audience.
And if I can take a minute, I think Sudharshan, just adding to your point on security posture, right? I remember this one experience wherein we built an app within 3 months, right? When there was a partner. This was with my previous organization, and we did the security audit, right? And the security audit, the way it is done from a perspective of complete security, it took us 3 months again to rebuild the application to comply to all the security demands, right? So again, and there are layers of security as well, right? It's just not at the network layer of, okay, you've done it SSL v2 and it is done with, right? You can go deep till database encryption across the layers of the application. I completely resonate with you. I think it's a whole security posture that is important.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think we're running out of time. Probably I'll take one question and maybe we can collectively answer the other one. There's a question which says, what are the direct impacts on customer experience with Apigee platform, right? A simple example is, a few years ago, if you had to change your address, right? Even the banks had the regulations that that was the only thing which you couldn't do online, right? In spite of having all the online options to do it, you still had to visit a bank, show your Aadhaar card or your proof of residence, etc., to do it, right? Today, you can still, a lot of banks allow you to do it online, right? With the API is part of it, right? So whether it's customer servicing or you even getting your transactions or information on your balance or status of your checkbook issued, all these very specific secure details about you being delivered to you as a self-servicing option is possible because of having an API management platform, right? If not, all the APIs had to be directly exposed to fetch this data and deliver it to you, which would compromise a lot of security there, right? Because you are sharing your very crucial personal information, and the bank has to respond back with your specific account balance or details, which are very, very sensitive in nature, right? So if you don't have a gateway, you would not have that security layer, and most of your it was not possible for the banks, although they had the APIs to respond back to it. It wouldn't be possible unless all the security and the regulations and the compliance requirements are met, which an API management platform brings into the table, right? So that, I hope that answers. So that's a direct experience, which Apigee or any API management platform can bring to their customers, right? So I will take probably one last question, which says, how do you leverage Apigee API tracing to improve or reduce the technical debts in the backend service applications? Very interesting question there. So Sudharshan, any thoughts on that? So it's basically asking how the management platform be used to improve or reduce the technical debt that is coming from the backend service.
Yeah, well, I think see a couple of points. I don't know if Trace can be directly linked to that, but Trace is one of the coolest features that I personally like in the platform. Right, it's almost like an X-ray machine. Obviously, for others that are probably not familiar with what the question is, Apigee Trace is basically think about it as an X-ray machine that allows you to see a snapshot of what actually happened with your API call that came in and went out, right? You would do a lot of different things in a call that came in, let's say authentication, traffic management, security, caching, routing, and then transformation on the response that came back, and a lot of things that can happen within the Apigee layer. But let's say if someone calls, an important partner calls you and says that, hey, you know what, we are starting to see some application experience because of some malformed response that came from your backend. Can you guys figure out what's going on? So you essentially turn on Trace and you actually look at what's going on with that response, and then you immediately, with a beautiful visual UI, you essentially know that this particular request came in with a malformed query parameter or an XPath or a JPath or something that led to a response that your application couldn't process. So that's basically the Trace. Now, to answer the question on the technical debt, one of the things that Trace is part of a much larger set of functionalities that we bucket under analytics, right? And obviously, analytics can help you directly address some of the tech debt, because many of our customers actually, some of the larger enterprises, this is what happens. First thing that they do is just put traffic through Apigee, even if they have an existing platform, if they have no API management layer in the backend, whatever else, they put Apigee in front of it just to kind of get the analytics. Because when traffic starts to flow, you start to see what is actually going on within the platform. And then you realize, oh, this particular API has not been hit for many days or many weeks. is there a version that can be deprecated? Are we running backend services or APIs that are not necessarily in production or is not even being hit can be deprecated? So those are a lot of those instances that we have seen. The combination of trays and a lot of analytics capabilities that just come out of the box allow you to turn off. That comes back to the lifecycle management of the API itself, right? Which versions do you need to keep? How do you move, certain partners from certain V1 to or a VX to VX+1, right? Those are things that can directly, as a product manager of an API, you will want to use these tools to be able to say that, how many APIs how many versions of this particular API should I manage at any point of time? And is there a way for me to deprecate? And how do I do that seamlessly without impacting applications, customer experience, and so on and so forth?
Absolutely. I think we've come to the end of the time. So what we can do is, there are more questions. I see that, I think there are at least 10 to 15 more questions, and I don't think we'll be able to take all of them now. So it would be great if you could write to us on these questions. We'll be more than happy to send them across to us, and we'll be happy to respond back to you with some kind of documentation, or maybe, set up a call to discuss this in more detail and give you those details. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Ashish, Shray, and Sudharshan for joining us. And I believe it was a great discussion, touching upon most of the topics like challenges, the best practices, the success stories, what can be done, how customers can get impacted, and how we can basically leverage the power of an API manager to boost your business. Right. So once again, thank you. Thanks a lot. Stay safe in the pandemic. Get yourself vaccinated, and cheers. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Bharath.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sudharshan, Ashish.
Thank you all.